How did Russell Wilson go from a potential MVP candidate to getting benched for a 27-year-old journeyman in just 3 years? Did he become too old? Did he lose the mindset that made him elite? Was the offensive strategy and overall management situation too difficult for him to manage? Or was he never as good as he was given credit for? I hope to provide an explanation on how we went from Russell Wilson looking like a surefire first-ballot Hall of Famer to someone signing a minimum prove-it deal with the Steelers, and maybe being a backup to newly acquired Justin Fields. In the third round of the 2012 NFL Draft, Seattle Seahawks drafted quarterback Russell Wilson with the 75th pick. Wilson was the sixth quarterback taken in this draft behind Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin III, Ryan Tannehill, Brandon Weeden, and Brock Osweiler. There has been some debate if Russell Wilson would have been the better choice in a modern-day redraft, but some still think Luck was too great of a generational talent. Either way, getting Russell Wilson in the third would end up being a massive steal for the Seahawks. Russ would immediately take the reins of the offense, winning the starting job over newly signed Matt Flynn, who many thought would be the presumptive starter heading into the season. While Russ would be a wild card, he would prove himself in his first year. He would lead the Seahawks to an 11-5 record, throwing for over 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, and landing himself a spot in the Pro Bowl, while finishing third in Offensive Rookie of the Year voting, behind Luck and RG3. Despite not winning that award, Wilson would lead his team past the Redskins in the wildcard round before losing to the Falcons 30-28 in the divisional round. This would only be an appetizer of what would come from Russ over the next few years. Wilson would show his worth in his second year, leading the team to a 13-3 record, with Russ himself finishing with another Pro Bowl nod and receiving the fourth most votes for AP Offensive Player of the Year. This season will culminate in Seattle's first Super Bowl victory with a 43-8 trouncing of the Denver Broncos. Wilson would play a great game, completing 18 of his 25 passes for 206 yards and 2 touchdowns. Still, while I can say all this and it is true, what I'm leaving out is Seattle's other weapon, the Legion of Boom. Of course, there's Marshawn Lynch, Beast Mode, and all that nonsense, but I'm really going to talk about the Legion of Boom, featuring Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, and others. This is still considered one of the greatest defensive lineups of all time. For reference, the 2013 Seahawks allowed only 231 points, 2752 passing yards, and 16 touchdowns while intercepting 28 passes. All of these numbers, outside of the 15 touchdowns that the Titans allowed, led the league. The only defense to match a similar level of pass defense since was the 2019 Patriots, which was the year Stephon Gilmore would win the Defensive Player of the Year award. Seattle's impressive 2013 would be followed up with an almost equally impressive 2014. While Russell Wilson would see a decline in passing touchdowns and QB rating, he would still take his team and their 12-4 record to another Super Bowl, this time against the New England Patriots. Football fans and Marshawn Lynch really don't need me to mention how this one ends, but for our purposes, let's just say the Patriots would win 28-24. While the loss would be bitter, the Seahawks looked primed to be in the championship picture for the next 10 years plus, as they had just been to 2 straight Super Bowls and had their franchise quarterback in place. What could go wrong? Well, over the next 7 seasons, the Seahawks would struggle to be true championship contenders, never making it past the divisional round in the playoffs. While Seattle would not reach the heights of 2013, Russ would go on to have the best years of his career between 2015 and 2021. He would throw for 4,000 yards 4 times, throw over 30 touchdowns 5 times, and only throw 61 interceptions during that entire span. This is a time frame that put Russell Wilson from a good quarterback to a top 5 elite quarterback in the league. Still, things were changing for Wilson and the Seahawks going into the 2021 season. In February 2021, it was noted in The Athletic that Russ had met with Seattle coaches about ways to fix the offense. After his suggestions were dismissed, he stormed out of the room. Another source noted that the Seahawks were finally holding him accountable because he's one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. He says he wants to be the greatest, so now people are holding him to that standard. To many, this would be the dynamic that would lead to the eventual trade from the Seahawks to the Broncos. Today, many only see the many issues that have happened since, but at the time, this was seen as a great trade for the middling Broncos team. New coach Nathaniel Hackett felt so confident in trading for Russ that he was quoted saying, "I don't need to watch tape. He has kicked my ass for many years." While it would be easy for many folks to see the greatness of a quarterback who nearly won 2 Super Bowls, had tons of experience winning, and put up some eye-popping numbers, it was harder to look at what was becoming evident during Russ's last season in Seattle. Wilson was a quarterback who was at his best when he had a strong ground game and a good defense. One might ask, don't you easily need all that and an offensive line to be successful? Yes, you do, but Russ's mobility created enough plays to hide the fact that the Seahawks never really got consistent offensive line play for Wilson during his time in Seattle. Unfortunately, by 2022, a 33-year-old Russell Wilson was not quite as mobile as he had been in previous seasons. He had already registered his lowest ESPN QBR in 2021, and the lack of mobility affected his passing ability inside and outside the pocket, culminating in him being sacked 55 times during his first season in Denver, more than any year with the Seahawks. Along with this, he only passed for 16 touchdowns, his lowest amount since 2014 and the lowest of any season in his career. While it is easy to blame Russ, it wasn't all his fault. Hackett, a first-year coach hired only months before Wilson was acquired, was clearly out of his depth leading the team. The Broncos would struggle to do anything to make Wilson's job easier, and without an offensive identity, they fired Hackett only 15 games into the season just after Christmas Day. The Broncos would move on to hire Sean Payton, best known for his single Super Bowl win with Drew Brees at the helm. Payton is considered to be an offensive genius, and the head coach-quarterback match seemed to be the perfect remedy for the bad hand Denver had been dealt. Unfortunately, this couldn't have been further from the truth, as the Broncos would limp out to a 1-5 start. While all wasn't lost as Wilson showed some resilience during a 5-game winning streak, it just wasn't meant to be as Denver would falter to 7-8 before benching Wilson for Jarrett Stidham. Through it all though, there were moments of vintage Wilson. Some great drives versus New England on Christmas Eve show that Russ could still improvise, make big plays, even if it wasn't quite what you would see from the same player 5 years prior. Still, the benching would all but prove that Wilson would no longer be in Denver's plans post-2023. This brings us all to this month, March 2024. Russell Wilson has just signed with the Steelers on a veteran minimum contract for $1.2 million, with Denver still paying nearly $38 million of his salary. While Pittsburgh had previously showed support for Kenny Pickett, and while Tomlin had previously suggested wanting competition for him, it was only in recent months that the rumors of Russ to Pittsburgh would pick up steam. It would appear at this point that Wilson might be competing with Justin Fields going into the season, but should be the starter heading into it. From his time in Tennessee, it would not be too crazy to expect a more run-oriented, conservative pass-style offense under Arthur Smith as offensive coordinator. Maybe a few big plays, work out a structure, throws, but I wouldn't expect them to attempt to use Wilson as the focal point of the offense in the same way he had been used in the past. While Wilson is nowhere near the bottom of the league as a quarterback like some may suggest, he definitely has some deficiencies that should be noted. His deep passing is not as accurate as it was when he was younger. He can still push the ball downfield, don't get me wrong, but it should be done strategically to avoid too many errant throws that can lead to turnovers. As noted earlier, Russ is not as elusive as he was, and after taking 100 sacks during his 2 seasons in Denver, and over 400 during his time in Seattle, you should be concerned about how well he might hold up over 17 games. With all that said, I do like the fit in Pittsburgh. As noted earlier, Russ is at his best with a strong ground game and a good defense. The Steelers have consistently shown commitment to their defense and had the 6th best scoring defense last season, and while Najee Harris isn't a top 3 back yet, he has had 3 straight 1,000-yard rushing seasons and might be ready to break out to new heights. Of course, this is just me putting a positive twist on all the news. Justin Fields might just take over the offense, and Russ might just be an afterthought and might be somewhere else after the season, who knows. Either way, I would expect 2024 for Russ to have him be the starter and be much closer to a 3,000-yard, 25-touchdown, 12-interception season than a 4,000-yard, 35-touchdown, 8-interception one. And yes, I would still expect the Steelers to make the playoffs because Tomlin can't post a losing season even if they started Pickett, Trubisky, and Randolph. So why would they get worse with Russ?